Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to tell you a story from the 90s. I don't know if you cringe when you hear me say, I'm going to tell you a story from the 90s, but I'm really excited about this one because it's one I realized that I never told. I know I tell bits and pieces of other stories, like a lot, and they all kind of come together and form like one cohesive memory. And there's one that I'm really excited to tell you about because it's something that popped into my brain the other night, and it's really interesting how that happens when all of a sudden this giant core memory just suddenly like manifests and you're like, oh my God, where were you? And I want to tell you what I was doing when that happened. So I take a lot of drives at night, late at night, like 2, 3, 4 in the morning if I can't sleep or something like that. I'm just driving. Myself and my husband were driving around, and I'm like, I'm going to just give you a tour of like my life. Because he's heard all of these stories before. I'm like, let me show you the places where all of these things happened. And I took him to my old house where a lot of the things happened. And FYI, I'm very interested in taking you on a tour to the same places. Like my old high school where I told stories about like Beat the Freak Week and all of the other crazy things that went down. I want to take you to my high school. I want to take you just around my town where Record Stop is, where I got my first Rosetta Stone CD, my first Wake CD, my first Christian Death CD, where I ordered Skinny Puppy The Process prior to its release. Like I pre-ordered it. There's a record store that was right in my town where I ordered that from. So I want to show you all those places. But if you're interested, let me know. So I want to tell you a story. It's just like these whole, like this group of thoughts that popped into my head. And you know, like they had the movie Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Well, we had like Gothhood of the Traveling Corset, and it was a corset that I got from Victoria's Secret in like 1996. And it wasn't actually a full corset per se, but it was like the closest thing we could come to it, because the real deal, we could not afford that. So when we came across anything that was like even remotely corset-like that went around the underbust, we went for it. And I found one in Victoria's Secret, and I had to have it. It was one of my favorite pieces. I wore it everywhere, and it was much coveted by my friends. And as things are back then, everything was very much communal. So despite us being all varying sizes, everybody borrowed this corset. Everyone wore this corset, and everyone somehow managed to fit into this corset, regardless if you were smaller than me or bigger than me. We just all fit. Even if I were alone in the car, I still would have wanted to go to these places, because in my head, that's where my brain was telling me to go. There's like no cars on the road. It was late at night, and it felt like the perfect time to do it, so I could slow down. And, you know, if anybody was awake, just creepily idle in front of their house, you know, as you do. And I ended up at one of the places in front of one of my ex-boyfriend's houses, who I'm still pretty much on cool terms with today, still talk to every now and again, and I was in front of Ed's house. Before you think of it anything like creepy or anything like that, oh, she's in front of her ex's house and she has her current partner in the car. No, a lot happened at that house. It was kind of like one of the big meeting places. So if you've ever seen this picture, showed it like a million times. So this was taken on Halloween, and this was in the cafeteria of our high school. And right after school that day, we went to Ed's house. And I told a bunch of stories of events and things that happened there. And one of the things that I remember is when I went to the Cure concert. So I saw the Cure, it had to have been 1996, because I had just turned 16 not that long before that. And I had broken up with Ed, and he kind of looked for any opportunity to kind of find a way to see me, because it wasn't a great breakup. There's no one out there that really has an amazing breakup where they're like, yeah, 4 out of 4 stars. I would totally do that again. But we were teenagers, so you kind of got to take this kind of thing with a grain of salt. Being teenagers and having any relationship that lasts over 6 months to any teenager is like world ending. So I was dating somebody else at the time after he and I had broken up, and it's a story I've told on this channel before, and it was about someone by the name of Davey. If you've been with me for a while, you know the story. If not, I highly recommend you listen to this story. It's very cheesy, but it's very nostalgic and very like swoon worthy for me. So I'm going to link this. So have a watch if you can, and you can kind of get the idea of Davey and I, because it was this like, it felt like a lifetime, but honestly, it was something that only lasted a few months, but it felt like a lifetime because so much had happened and there were so many feelings. But back then, everything was just life altering, no matter how small it might seem by today's standards. And I miss that kind of feeling. I miss the feeling that comes along with that, where you have to immediately call all of your friends. Oh my God, you'll never guess what happened. It's kind of one of those things. So while I was dating Davey, we all got word that The Cure was going to be playing. And of course, being a teenager, being a newly formed goth, we all lost our minds and we're like, we need to go to this. So back then, there was a secret ticket master where we would get all of our tickets in the dressing room of a TJ Maxx in Patchogue on Long Island. And this is where we all went. You'd call them on the phone and ask them if the ticket master was open, and they weren't allowed to tell you that there was a ticket master there. They couldn't say. They would just say, come into the store. And they wouldn't even tell you where it is. You would have to find it yourself. And fortunately, there was never any line. But with this one in particular, I don't actually remember going into the TJ Maxx for this. I remember my mother had to pay for it on her credit card because a bunch of us wanted to go, but none of us had credit cards, and you needed a credit card to buy the tickets. So we all came in with cash, and I remember my mother being on everyone's ass, you better pay me back, because she put it all in her credit card. And we did. We gave my mother the money. She paid on her credit card. She called the hotline, and we got the tickets. We saw The Cure in Nassau Coliseum, which is on Long Island, and it was the best. So the reason Ed's house ties into it is because I was friends with his cousin, Corinne, who I've also showed on this channel. This is Corinne. I was also wearing her skirt at the time. I remember my full outfit, by the way. I remember exactly what I wore. And remember the corset that I was talking about, like goth hood of the traveling corset. This is the corset. I found it on eBay because I went looking for it because I want it again. And this was it. So this kind of seemingly just innocent waist cincher, it was like everything to me. And I wore it with Corinne's skirt, which was a skirt that she had thrifted, and it was a sheer, completely see-through, very tattered skirt. And it had an underlay to where it was like, I guess, a chiffon over black. So it was a very like normal woman's skirt, but she just kind of tattered the bottom and completely ripped the lining out of it. So anybody that wore it, we had to wear shorts underneath because this was another communal item. It was the communal skirt. So I was wearing the communal long sheer skirt with black shorts underneath, ripped tights, 20-hole Doc Martens, and I was wearing my waist cincher, my favorite corset that I had at the time from Victoria's Secret. Again, this one.
File's done.
This is a thing that we talked about here. See this? Fishnet top. We had a lot of tops like this, and they were made from varying types of tights. And we didn't always use fishnet. It could be anything. It could be lace tights. Any tights that you had can be turned into a top. And another popular one was just regular black sheer tights. And that's what I actually wore that night, was just sheer tights that I turned into a shirt. And it's really simple. You just cut a little hole into the crotch, you cut the feet off, and then, you know, stick your fingers through holes that you make. And I think about it in my head, and it really is kind of ballerina-esque because I had this kind of long tattered skirt, I had that corset, I had the scoop neck top, and of course you cut the holes in these sleeves so you can have like thumb holes, finger holes, and it holds the sleeves very long. Long sleeves were far more attractive in a goth look back then. It was like long sleeves, completely where it was at. So that was my whole kind of look at the time. I am kind of telling it in a haphazard way because I'm desperately trying to remember it. I'm seeing it in my head. And now that I have found that corset on eBay, even though it's not my size, I really want to recreate that entire outfit and show you. If you want me to do that, let me know. But I'm really interested in doing that. So we had to stop at Ed's house because he said she had one of his tapes and he needed it back immediately. Like it was a mixtape. He needed it back like right now. So we had to stop at his house. I waited in the car, and of course, instead of Corinne running to the door, he met us at the driveway. So he came running out, opened the back door and he had to see what I was wearing for some reason. He was always very policey about what I was wearing when we were together, but not this time because we weren't together anymore. And I think he was also hoping that Davy was in the car. We hadn't picked him up yet because he lived in Port Jeff. There's a little bit of like animosity there. It was like this whole big high school drama, breakup, next boyfriend, ex-boyfriend situation. It was a mess. But if you see the video about Davy and I, you'll see why it was this like tempestuous, huge, like swoon-worthy and dramatic thing, because that's what it is when you're a teenager. But also you add goth to the equation, where you are a baby bat and dramatic as it is, and the music you're listening to, we're listening to things like Disintegration and Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, and we're listening to the Smiths and Morrissey, How Soon Is Now, and Psychedelic Furs. So everything is just so aggressively romantic and tragic. So that was kind of the whole theme. Anxiety inducing at points, but it was a good anxiety because it was that excitement. So I'm getting all like swoony thinking about it. So we pick up Davy, and we go to the concert, and everybody looks like us. Everybody there, they're all completely gothed out. And if you know Nassau Coliseum, it's huge. It's a huge venue. So there are people from all over coming to see The Cure, and imagine in the 90s what everyone must have looked like. So you had people from the 80s who listened to The Cure coming, and it was like a huge celebration of all people that were just like us. Just the stage itself. I will never forget the stage because it was just perfect and dramatic like we were. So there was this huge white sheet set up at the back, and there were fans facing the sheet, and there were lights on this white sheet that were ever changing. They were kind of going to violet and other sort of like deep colors, and this fan is just blowing the sheet, and the sheet is like this, and it's billowy, and the lights are just changing it ever so slightly. And Robert Smith takes the stage, and he's singing things like Plain Song and Charlotte Sometimes, and everybody is just swaying, and it's just the sea of black. And I'm 16, and I'm just losing my mind. I can't handle it. It's too much goth for like one situation. Pardon this interruption as well as my voice. I have the flu. And as I sit here editing this video, I wanted to provide a little bit of archival footage, if I could find it, to give you a bit of an example as to the night that we attended. I wanted you to see it the way that I saw it. And not only did I get that, but as fate would have it, the one and only video that I was able to find from this event is not only from the exact event that I attended in 1996, but it's from the exact same vantage point, as in the person filming this was stood freakishly close to me. So now not only are you getting to see the exact concert that I attended in 1996, but you're actually getting the same exact view that I had as well. So even though it is filmed with the exact quality that one would expect from a VHS camcorder in 1996, I still very much felt like I was there, because this is exactly the same view that I had. And when you're a teenager, it's really funny like that, because when you know how it is. You're either if you're a baby bat now, or you remember your baby bat years, you remember how big things like this were when you're surrounded by people like yourself, and you're looking at everybody, and you're among your people. It's just this sort of high. And I think this is probably the reason why I never felt inclined to drink or do drugs or anything, because I was perfectly fine with experiencing like the situation, like raw dogging the night in the non-gross kind of way. But I wanted to experience all that. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to hear the music. I wanted to just feel everyone's energy, and I wanted to remember everyone's faces. I wanted to see what they were wearing. I wanted to hear what they were saying. I desperately wanted to just take all of that into myself and just hold on to it. A lot of people kind of look at romanticizing your life as if it's a bad thing. And it's not. We should be. We only get one shot at this. So why not take every event and opportunity that comes our way and just immerse yourself into it, not hold back. And I find myself now, because I'm just jaded a lot by a lot of things that have happened, I do hold back, and I try to stop myself from doing that. But the reason I hold back is because I've been hurt, because I've been through things that have messed me up. And having been through those things, you become protective, you become very guarded. And it's not like you're this, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed. I always get it confused. Is it wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, or is it bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? Either way, you're not that anymore, to where you're just fully open to the experience, and you're not very apprehensive. You just want to go in. You just want to throw yourself into the deep end. And it's not like that anymore as you get older. And I want to feel those things again. I want to go in fearlessly as I used to, because I wonder if a lot of the reason why, there were situations and circumstances that happened throughout the years within the subculture, with people, with music. There were things that did happen that changed things, but we did too. So I wonder if a lot of what happened as we aged along with the goth scene, if we had a lot to do with that. If our being jaded and our becoming so guarded from being hurt and what we've been through caused us to close ourselves off just enough to where it dulled things. But then as years pass and we remember our youth and we remember the things that brought us to that place in the first place, and we remember the music and all of the things that made us happy and who we are, that nostalgia opens us back up, and suddenly you're kind of met with a much more fearless version of yourself, because you want those things so badly. You want them as bad as you did as when you were younger. So you get rid of a lot of that fear. You ditch a lot of that apprehension and replace it with excitement, wanting to feel the way that you did. And it's not a matter of recapturing youth. I know a lot of people kind of look at it like, oh, you just can't give in to the fact that you're getting older. And getting older is okay. There's nothing wrong with getting older, because of all the experiences that we've had and the things that we carry along with that. Waking up and feeling like you were thrown out of a 20-story building because you slept on the wrong pillow, that's a suck part of it. But, do yoga, do stretches, take some ibuprofen, eat right. There are things to kind of push that off or mitigate it for as long as humanly possible. But when it comes to getting older, I like my memories. I love my memories. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have those things. I have a hair tickling my face, and it is making me crazy. I have to get this hair. Where is it? Where are you, you evil, evil beast? Was that it? It was my dog's hair. He was saying hi. I digress. I'm happy for the memories that I've had, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. Because people often say, oh, if I could go back and I can do it over again, I wish I would. But who's to say that you would be the same person? Who's to say that you would know the same people? And the memories that I had were great. There was a lot of negative things that happened along the way, but for the most part, a lot of it was just a dream for me. And the reason that it was such a dream is because I honestly had one foot in fantasy and the other in reality. And the reason for that is because I wasn't a normie kid. I wasn't involved in everything that the other kids were doing. Like the music they listened to was whatever was playing on the radio or whatever was on MTV. The clothes they wore, it was whatever what was selling in the stores, anything that was popular, and everybody kind of had to keep up with each other. But with the goth scene and the alternative kids, it was a lot different because we were part of that kind of fantasy world in a way. Because we were dressing up by those standards back then would have been considered mythical creatures. We looked like vampires. We liked vampires. We read books about vampires. We watched movies with vampires. Hello, the Lost Boys. But that being said, we also had a foot in reality as well because we had to live our real life. We weren't completely immersed in this fantasy where we just chose to exist in a fantasy world and eschew any sense of reasonable reality and living our lives, which we did both. And I think that was a great place to be. because we knew that there was a time and a place. We knew that we can listen to the music and that's why I always am such an advocate of music, because you listen to the music and it gets you into this place and you're with your people. You don't necessarily need to talk. You can go basically anywhere. Puts you in this space. And people are like, oh, goth is a mindset. And what do you think takes you there? It's the music. There's a reason. And it's just so evocative. It's those moments that we should never, ever let go of. Never let go of that. And it's okay to have those moments, because despite taking brief vacations into your own thoughts and into your own daydreams, and there's nothing stopping you from waking up the next day and going to school or going to work. None of us. It didn't stop any of us. We didn't think, oh no, I must go dance with the fairies. I couldn't simply go to work today and then answer phones or take people's orders or whatever it is that you do. We knew. And working a job was a means to an end as well, because it paid for the things that we loved, especially, for me at the time. As I got a little bit older, things got a little bit more difficult. And when I moved out on my own, I struggled a lot. It was difficult for me to buy things like food and whatnot, because I had to pay rent, I had to pay bills. I made it to a point in life where it just got to a point of survival. And survival was sort of my mantra for several years after that. And I want to say it was about 2001 and then kind of moving forward. So it hasn't really stopped. And honestly, when I started my channel is when I really started to ease off of that. And it happens for so many of us. Because we've all had those experiences with, like I said, the one foot in fantasy, the other one in reality, living that fantasy, enjoying that, like listening to your music, dressing like a vampire if you so choose, sans teeth. I seldom saw anybody with the teeth, but the other attire definitely, it could have rivaled at the time. Nowadays it's just goth, but back then people were like clutching their pearls when they saw us. And it was so basic. A lot of the stuff, again, by today's standards, a lot of the things that we wore that had people clutching their pearls by today's standards is actually, you'd see a lot of normal people wearing it. I know I told the story, but when I was like 15, I went for a job interview at Burger King, and I was wearing blue nail polish. It wasn't even an icky blue or anything like that. It was a pretty sky blue. And the whole time the interviewer was like, I knew exactly what she was thinking, looking at my nails. And she said, if I hire you, you have to take that off. Like it was the grossest thing ever. And I did, because they wanted me to wear pretty colors like pinks and reds. No, I would rather wear nothing at all. It's either the blues, because blue was always my color, or black. But driving around that night, just kind of going on the tour of all my old haunts and where I used to live, and the whole town was very walkable, probably by modern day standards, and maybe not, because people don't really, are teenagers, they're not too into walking so much, but I did. I went to all my old apartments, the houses I lived in with my family, one of the houses where like a lot of the things had took place. I went to Record Stop. I went to both of the old high schools, because you had Sachem North and Sachem South. You can get onto South Campus, but you can't get onto North Campus. So if I take you there, I might not be able to get onto North unless I go during the day. I wonder if they'll let me in. I want to see if they'll let me in and they'll let me film, because there's a lot of things that I want to show you. There's a staircase that is notorious in the school, and I wonder if they still call it that, because South Campus, they turned it into a junior high, but being outside and looking in the windows, nothing has changed. Even the color palette, they didn't even paint. So they had these stairs called, this isn't the name, but you'll know what I mean. They called it the unaliving stairs, and it was a set of stairs that you must be careful on, because you either fell or some asshat pushed you down, which happened a lot, particularly during Beat the Freak Week that I talked about on my channel. So I want to take you there. It would be nice to show you. We went all around, and I had stories. I didn't realize, but I had stories about so many of the places that we had gone to. And there were so many houses that there were parties and events, and my ex Ed got irritated that girls can have sweet 16s but boys can't, so he decided to have a sweet 16 at his house, so there was a sweet 16 there. The first and only boys' sweet 16 I'd ever been to. I also have memories of watching Friday the 13th, but that must have been a different night. But there was a strobe light because all of our friends were like goth industrial DJs, so they would have strobe lights and stuff up. And at every party, somebody brought like the DJ set, and then they brought the strobe lights and like the other lights. And so every time there was a party, they had it looking like a club. Even at my house, where I had like, it was this house that I'm probably going to show you at some point, but the carpeting was like the shag carpeting, and it was so stuck in the 1970s. And we had a party at my house, and with all the DJ lights up, it was just funny with everybody dancing on the shag carpeting and like the wood paneled walls right next to like the wood burning stove, but then you have like the strobes and the neon lights, and everybody's like, you know, dancing to Sisters of Mercy. That was funny. That actually made me laugh a lot. But it was interesting how your house can take on a whole new life once you include a ton of your friends to where it's beyond capacity. You get a DJ, you change the lights, and suddenly your living room feels like another world. And the next day, you can't believe that you were stood in the spot dancing, and it felt like you were at a club. And I talk about clubs a lot, and it is important that I always reiterate that in the goth scene, clubs are not the same as they would be seen with any other, I guess, scene. Like anybody who listens to house music or just hip hop rap or anything, it's very different. With a goth club, it's more of, it is music, it is dancing, and it is getting to hear your music, dress up and see your people, but it's more of a social event to where we can all congregate and be in the same space. And it's a way to meet other goths, but it's also a way to get the community together, because goth is very community oriented, and it's a way to get the community together in the same place. So it is very much a social event as well. So it's an entirely different vibe and serves a different purpose, because you have a lot of goths who live in places where there aren't other people that are like them. And sometimes they travel long distances to get to the event so they can get here, listen to their music, dance if they want to, and then they can congregate and meet people that are just like them, which you really need. Community is something that's really important, and in any community, but with the goth subculture, it's important that we find each other, because socializing with other goths is important. Because if you're like, you know, the only goth in the village, it's hard and it's lonely and isolating. And I remember when I lived in England, I had to travel very long distances just to go to a goth night. I lived in Chesterfield at the time, and I remember going to Chains on Velvet in Norwich. That was probably my favorite goth night at the time. And then you have Slimelight in London, and then there is Rock City that does events in Nottingham, and then there was one in Sheffield. I can't remember the name. All of these places are really important when it comes to the subculture, and just being involved and meeting people and getting to socialize with people who are like you is just overall just very important. And I realized how off to the side I am, and I'm usually like right in the middle. Still feels off. So it's just weird that driving around late at night, going to all of your old haunts, will make you remember a corset that made you remember the Cure concert, that made you remember an ex, and then borrowing a skirt, and then just completely made you recreate the outfit that you were wearing in your head, and then go on a shopping adventure to where you needed to find this corset, and I found the corset. It was this whole big thing, and now I want to see if she accepted my offer, because I put in an offer on it. And it was one of those things too, where it was a moral issue, because the corset is a size large, which I'm not. I would need like small, extra small, because when you're wearing something like that, you want it a little bit smaller than you. And I remember it was hook and eye closures, but there was at least 3 rows of them. So you could wear it on the loosest one, and that'll be okay. But as a general rule, when I'm thrifting, I don't buy anything that is any size above me, or anything plus size. And the reason, unless of course it's something that's I want to fit a certain way, but if I have any plans to alter it, I used to, but once I started talking to other goths who are plus size, and they talk about how difficult it is for them to find clothes in the thrift stores, and they want to thrift, but it's really hard for them to find, I leave it alone now. I don't touch it. But when it comes to things like Depop, Poshmark, eBay, and things that I like, it's always like, should I, shouldn't I, am I taking away from somebody? But in this case, it didn't seem like I did. I think I'm like the only person watching it. So I'm going to recreate the look. I have a bob wig because I always had short hair. This was my look. This was my hair. I think it's important that we hold on to some semblance of childlike whimsy and the things that we love and the things that we love to do, because there is this mentality nowadays that's run ragged, and I know you've seen it, that by holding on to even hobbies, just hobbies, and not living your life, paying your bills, eating, sleeping, going to bed, repeating the process, that by doing anything that deviates from that, anything that's has any semblance of fun, or heaven forbid it reflects anything that you've done in your youth, then you are an absolute fail human, and it's the worst thing that you could possibly do. And that's stupid. Why would we go through all of the things that we go through in life just to lead us to a point where we live each day to work, pay our bills, and die? Doesn't seem very fun, does it? So hold on to those things. It doesn't matter how old you are. There are people who are rediscovering the goth scene after years of going through crap like that. There are people who are just discovering the goth scene for the first time now, and they're older. There are people who are grappling with, I'm a goth and people are treating me like crap because I'm older. There's nothing wrong with you and everything wrong with that mindset. Because as long as you have one foot firmly planted in the reality that one must work to pay their bills and pay their taxes and live like a good little human that keeps their life functional, you can do whatever the hell you want. Don't murder or anything like that, but do whatever you want. Listen to whatever music you want. Wear whatever clothes that you want. Go anywhere you want. Just don't hurt. There's a general rule that everyone must abide, and it is one simple rule. You ready? Don't be an asshole. That's it. Don't be an asshole. As long as we follow this one rule, who cares? With all of that being said, I am going to end this here and continue my hunt to see if I can find that corset. I found one, but if I could find it in a smaller size, because I do have a little bit of guilt taking it from somebody who it might actually be in their size, but it is the exact one that I had. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, guys. Bye.